I'm dating coach and relationship expert Jennifer Hurwitz, and welcome to Doing Relationships Right. Raw, authentic, and insightful, this podcast is a no bullshit look at all things dating and relationships. The good, the not so good, and the what the hell was that? No worries, I've got you, and we'll figure it all out together without taking ourselves too seriously here on Doing Relationships Right. Here you are at midlife. Your boobs have entered a new zip code. You have genes older than your daughter's new fiance. And now you're single again. But is that cause for a crisis? Hell no. It's time to pick yourself up, Buttercup. Whether you're freshly unhitched, just dipping your toesies back into the dating pool, or ready to dive into a new relationship, my new book, Midlife Priceless, A Dating Coach's Guide to Finally Doing Relationships Right, has you covered with new dating and relationship advice tailored to meet you wherever you are in your relationship journey. Join me, Jennifer Hurwitz, author of best-selling books, One Happy Divorce and Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, as I share BS-free tips and laugh out loud personal anecdotes to help set you on the path toward finally doing dating and relationships right. Grab your copy of my new book, Midlife Priceless, at jenniferhurwitz.com. That's jenniferhurwitz.com. Good morning. Good morning. This is Doing Relationships Right. And I'm Jennifer Hurwitz, and I'm here every single week. I don't know, Tuesdays, Saturdays, Fridays, pick a day. I don't know what day it is, but I am so excited because, Dr. Nicole, I'm just so glad you're here. I can't even tell you. We were talking
so happy
before
to be
the
here.
show. And I'm just, you're like, I feel like I've been stalking you for so long. And you were actually one of the first people that I reached out to start my show like this season in August. And I cannot believe you're finally here because we've been going back and forth and back and forth. But if you do not know Dr. Nicole McNichols, if you're listening, if you do not know this woman, then you need to get yourself out from behind the rock under the bed.
Oh my gosh.
Dr. Nicole, you are like the sexiest sex doctor professor in the entire world. I love your content. I'm obsessed with your TikTok. I think that what you're doing for everybody, for this, first of all, I'm just going to read your bio because I can't even contain myself. Dr. Nicole McNichols is a human sexuality professor at the University of Washington. She teaches her class, The Diversity of Human Sexuality, to, are you ready for this? 4,000 students each year. That is insane. Okay. I wish I was one of them. Just so you know, I'm jealous. Making it it's the largest in the university's history. Did you know that? I think you did know that yourself, but I can't even take this.
I did know that.
You are the author of the textbook, Human Sexuality in a Diverse Society. And in 2017, I watched your popular TED Talk, by the way, your TED Talk entitled Students on Top, A Vision for a 21st Century Sex Education. Are you amazing? How do you feel about yourself? I'm just enamored. I think you're amazing.
I just feel really grateful for what I get to do. We were kind of talking about that before we got started. And yeah, it's just such a pleasure because I feel like I get to really help people because not many people have had access to good sex education. But before we get started, I just want to throw some love right back at you because you are like the best friend I wish I had in college in my 20s when I was single. If I had had your advice, you would have saved me so much heartbreak. I can't even tell you, so much heartbreak.
If you had this version of Jennifer, but back in the day in college, I needed you. Isn't that funny how that happens?
Gosh.
I needed Dr. Nicole.
How that works?
Yes, because I was a mess. So
when
I think
I was a mess.
I was a mess. So when I think about the Jennifer that was in college at Michigan State when I was in my 20s, I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing because kids, young adults need you. They need you.
Thank you.
And the way that you put your content out on TikTok, it's so informative, but smart. And it doesn't make you feel stupid. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's kind of my goal is to put it out in social media in a way where it's digestible but where it's not watered down, because I think that there is a lot that exists on social media around sex that is trying to kind of just be shocking for the sake of being shocking, but has a lot of misinformation that I don't know. I mean, in some ways, hey, look, I think any information out there about sex is trying to normalize bodies and normalize pleasure and prioritize especially female sexual pleasure, which for so long has been neglected. And we've just been taught that sex is supposed to look a certain way and you're supposed to do it a certain way. And if you're not doing it a certain way, you're not doing it right. But I do, I'm trying to create content that's trying to help people and is assuming that they're interested in knowing, right? And is treating people like adults and looking at it from, look, this isn't just sex tips that you give, your girlfriend, even though those have a place for sure. But everything I'm trying to put out there really is trying to be things that are backed up by research and backed up by accurate medical things and by studies that we have in the top tier sex research journals. It's trying to get towards like, these are the facts. This isn't just a person's opinion. But, maybe it's time that we look at these things and have honest conversations. And also really celebrate sexuality in a way where most of us, if we had any kind of sex education in high school, right? And you have to remember that only about 30 states right now even require sex education. It's crazy. When we have to do something, I know. And because it's up to states, it's not federally mandated. And even in states where it is required, it's rarely required to be medically accurate. Can you imagine taking a history class where it wasn't required to be historically accurate? I mean, we would never tolerate that. And it's like, there's just, it rarely talks about LGBTQI plus issues and identities. It definitely doesn't talk about pleasure. It usually just talks about anatomy and reproduction and tells you about all the scary bad things that can happen with sex. But, especially when, we think about society and relationships. And I don't know, I think most people have probably seen this in the media, but we are in the midst of a sex recession, right? We think that people are having tons of sex, but actually they're not. And people are actually missing out on opportunities for intimacy and connection. And then you couple that with a culture where there is, a lot of people's sex education is just coming from porn. And, I talk a lot about how porn, when it's understood as fantasy.
Question for you. I was going to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm just kind of, I'm an academic.
Are you kidding me? I love it. This is perfect.
But, with pornography, again, it's not that there's this problem with porn. I mean, porn isn't something that we need to now start shaming people for when it's, ethically sourced, meaning that you're paying for your porn and that the actors and actresses are being paid and they're not being forced to do anything that they don't want to do. There's no reason not to enjoy it. And there's no reason that, we should respect sex workers. I mean, the idea that a sex worker is doing something that is, less, that is more demoralizing than another job is ridiculous. I mean, how is sitting in, a cubicle with fluorescent light on you all day, just answering to a boss, less demoralizing than a sex work job where you have total control over your time, what you're doing? So I just think that it's, however, right, the place where porn causes problems is that when people aren't, appreciating it as fantasy and instead are using it as a source of sex education. And it starts guiding the way that people have sex.
That's my question.
That's the problem, right? Well, because, go ahead.
Well, my question for you is, my sons, both of them, they're going to love this, but one is 18 and one is 20. And when they started watching porn, I mean, I knew, like, we talked about it. And for me, it was really important that I told them that they needed to understand that that is not what, I don't know if this is wrong or right, or if I should have done this, but I did.
No, that's right. This is perfect.
Good, thank God. I love to get a little validation here, but I needed to make sure that they knew it wasn't what real life, sex or making love was, because it was really important to me, because I was asking like, well, what kind of porn are you watching, guys? And like, what are we doing here? Because, I mean, they were young because with all the technology and the iPads and the whatever. And I was like, okay, here we go. This kind of, I'm like, go talk to your dad, but they didn't want to. They felt comfortable talking to me. And my friends thought that was really weird. I'm like, it's not weird. Like we have a really open relationship conversation wise. And, they felt comfortable. I think that's another thing, is that you make your content, it's comfortable. I feel like I'm never uncomfortable watching you. The way that you talk, the way that you, just your delivery. I feel like talking about sex with, having tough conversations about sex, you even teach that. Like you know what I'm saying? Like you teach us how to have tough conversations. I've had conversations recently with not only my kids, but with the partner that I'm with now, where like it was uncomfortable. And I actually sent him clips of yours.
Oh my gosh. That means so much to me.
Because you just do it the way that you, I can't even explain. It's something about comfortability, something about making sex comfortable is important. It's important. So
yeah.
I appreciate you for that.
I mean, and that really is my goal. And that's why I do feel like a lot of the things that I talk about have to do with trying to feel more comfortable, right? So I talk a lot about being present during sex and sexual mindfulness, and this idea that, instead of thinking of yourself as somebody to be judged, right? A lot of Masters and Johnson in the 1960s, they came up with this term called spectatoring. It's so common, it actually has a name. And it's the experience that is particularly common among women, where when they're having sex, instead of sort of being in the moment, they're almost watching themselves from a third party perspective, and they're picking themselves apart, and they're thinking, oh, my stomach must look fat. They're going to see, my genitals are going to look weird, or they're going to see that I'm, oh my God, my thighs. Or what am I going to look? What do I look? What is my facial expression like? Right? They're almost just sitting there judging themselves. And that has such huge ramifications, because first, it's huge. I mean, first of all, it keeps you from, literally, if you look at the brain during sex and during orgasm, the parts of the brain that are the prefrontal cortex, which is really the part of the brain that's responsible for thinking and planning and thinking about, did you forget the laundry? Did you turn the stove off, right? That part of the brain, right? When you look at somebody who's having sex, who's enjoying sex, who's especially during orgasm, that part of the brain shuts off. Right. So if you're sitting there using that part of your brain, engaging in these types of comparisons, you're physically not going to be able to enjoy sex.
No, of course not.
It's just not going to happen. No. It's not going to happen. And if you start thinking that the narrative in terms of like the script that you're supposed to follow during sex is what you just watched in that porn scene last night, you're going to start behaving in a way that's not authentic to you, right? But that instead is following this script and doing what you think you're supposed to be doing, instead of thinking like, how does this feel to me? And how is my partner responding, right? Like looking at your partner's sexual cues and letting those be your guide. And the thing is that this has really big ramifications, because it's not just going to impact your ability to experience pleasure during sex, but it's also going to impact your relationship, because intimacy is important in relationships. And if you're not able to enjoy sex, you're going to start avoiding it, right? You're not going to want to have it. When you have it, it's going to be clear that you're not kind of coming to it from a place of presence and authenticity. And that's going to impact your relationship. So yeah, so I think these things are important. I don't think it's just like, oh, let's just talk about something wild and crazy like sex. I think that now more than ever, we're living in such a lonely, isolated world. I mean, I think especially after COVID, a lot of people just feel sort of a profound sense of loneliness. And I think if we can stop judging each other and come together and share intimate experiences in a way where we feel like we're fully showing up, that's just going to help us. It's just going to make us happier, better people.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that just be nice to be able to just connect and just be in? I mean, Well, you wrote an article that I'm just going to like segue because you did this perfectly.
Yeah.
But you talked about the link between like kissing and sexual satisfaction, which I think is so huge because so many of my girlfriends, we talk about this and even some of my guy friends were like, we never kiss anymore, or we have sex, but we don't kiss.
Yep.
Which is so unnerving to me because kissing is like my favorite part of all of it. Like, I mean, if you could take away everything,
it's amazing.
Like, do not tell me you're not going to kiss me.
Don't take away kissing.
Don't take away kissing.
Oh my God, I'm exactly the same way.
And I remember like with my ex-husband, when the kissing was done, we were done. I was like, I just, it's so sad to me. Okay, y'all, we need to talk about the holidays and divorce. It's a stressful time for families, especially when alcohol is involved, and our friends at SoberLink want to help. SoberLink has teamed up with divorce and family law experts to provide information that offers peace of mind during the holidays. For those who still haven't heard about SoberLink, it is the solution if you are going through a divorce and custody case involving alcohol. Whether you are falsely accused of alcohol use or are concerned about your child's safety because of the other parent's alcohol use, SoberLink can help. SoberLink works to keep children safe, and its technology makes it a gold standard in alcohol monitoring systems. Don't miss out on SoberLink's free guide for the upcoming holiday season. Request it today at www.soberlink.com/DRR. That's soberlink.com.
It's so sad, Jennifer. And that's exactly right. And yeah, so the article that you're referring to is one where there was research that came out that showed that couples who kiss during sex have more orgasms, or females have more orgasms. That's because men usually have an orgasm from sex. It's not as hard for them, right? But in women, there's an orgasm gap, right? Where men have more orgasms than women. So the question is, how do you close that gap? And what we find is that, kissing increases the chance of orgasm for women, and at least in the context of heterosexual sex. So, I cannot remember if this study included LGBTQ individuals. It certainly should. Yeah, I would be really surprised if they didn't. We need more research on that, but I'd be really surprised if there was a difference, right? I mean, kissing increases intimacy between two people no matter what. And in terms of the why, right? Well, kissing is this incredibly intimate experience. I mean, there is a reason why a lot of sex workers will say any sexual activity you want, just no kissing.
Like Pretty Woman.
It's too intimate.
Do you remember?
Like Pretty Woman.
Yes, where she says, I don't kiss.
Like Pretty Woman. She says, I don't kiss.
I don't kiss.
It's too intimate.
Right. And then when she kisses him, it changes everything, remember?
Right. It changes everything. It changes everything. Yes. Exactly. Yes. So it slows the pace of sex, right? Even just from like that basic of a level, it increases intimacy and connection. And we know that especially for when it comes to female orgasm, intimacy and connection are really key, right? I mean, that is really what helps a person have an orgasm. This is not to say that women can't enjoy casual sex, right? Because you can have an intimate experience even in casual sex if you are coming to it, and that really is an experience that you're coming to from a place, again, of authenticity, where it isn't something you're doing because you're hoping that it's going to lead to something, or that you're going to like change the person's mind, or that all your friends are doing it, so you should do it, or, but if it really is, just a night of connection and fun and authenticity. I mean, what we do know from research that women are less likely to have an orgasm in casual sex encounters, but not all women. Some women have no problem having an orgasm in casual sex encounters. So, enjoy them, right? It depends. Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, we all have different stories there. Yes. But, if you think about the experiences where maybe you did have an orgasm, it probably was one where there was a lot of you felt comfortable enough to have a lot of sexual communication.
I feel like it's the comfortable thing.
It comes back to the comfortable thing.
So how do you this is a big question I have for you. So I know this answer because I've watched your stuff and I stalk you, but like for my listeners, when you have to have, I have like a girl crush when I have to have, when you have to have a difficult conversation. Can you tell my listeners, like, let's say I want to kiss more. Let's say I want to kiss more with my partner and he does, and I, instead of saying, you don't kiss me enough, or I don't want to, I don't want to do this anymore because you don't kiss me. What's a nice way? Give us a little example of how we can do that.
Absolutely.
The good way.
Okay. So first of all, when it comes to sexual communication, my general guideline is save the bigger conversations about like, I want to be kissed more, or I really want to try this or that. How would you be into it? This is my fantasy. Kind of those bigger, a little bit more conversations that involve more vulnerability. Save those for when you're not in the midst of sex, right? Because when you're both naked and in bed, like you're vulnerable. And if you bring something up and you sense some kind of initial hesitancy from your partner, that's going to kill the mood. And or it's really easy to bring something up and for it to feel like a criticism, and you're naked sharing this intimate moment and you get that criticism, it can feel really bad, right? So the types of sexual communication that I recommend in the bedroom are things like moaning, sighs, helping to move somebody's hand to a place where it feels better, saying, can you do more of this, right? So that type of, can you do more of this? And in terms of the larger conversations, like I want to really kiss more during sex, or I want to try, would you be up for trying a toy? Or do you want to watch porn together before we, have sex, whatever it is you're into. Have those outside, like when you're having breakfast, like at a non-sexy time. I have a woman that comes from a sex shop who gives a talk on sexual communication to my class every quarter. And she says the best place to have conversations about things that you want to try in the bedroom is an IHOP, like the least sexy place you can imagine, right? Over pancakes and IHOP. So, but the other thing that's really critical, I think, what you bring up is you always I would suggest always trying to frame it in terms of what you want more of, as opposed to what the person is doing wrong. I want, I love kissing you, and why? It makes me feel really close to meet you. It makes me feel connected to you. It slows things down. Can we do more kissing? I want to try this sex toy, and we have amazing sex and you are incredible, but I think it would help me to have even more orgasms, or an even more intense orgasm, if we used my favorite toy in the bedroom. Or could we try this position? Wouldn't that be fun? So adding to the repertoire.
Okay, so what happens
I'm
sorry, what happens if you say something like that and your partner says no?
So,
because that happens sometimes, question. And then you're like,
it totally happens sometimes.
Like, I can't believe I asked and you shut me down.
Exactly. So I recommend bringing things in slowly. Okay. So let's say that you want to share, right, a sexual fantasy. So let's say you're like, I have a sexual fantasy. We'll just pick not a vanilla, but like a very cliche sexual fantasy, right? That you're the doctor and I'm your patient. Okay. So, you may to sit down and be like, so I have this sexual fantasy where you're the doctor and I'm the patient and you give me a checkup. Let's go try it right now. Right. That might be a little much. Yeah.
He's like, whoa.
To your partner,
I don't have a stethoscope.
Right? Like, whoa, oh my God, what's happening? So maybe you started out by, have you ever thought about maybe we should like talk about our sexual fantasies with each other, right? And maybe get them to go first, right? Get them to share what their fantasy is. And then say, well, this is my fantasy, right? And then be like, are there sort of small ways that we could incorporate that, right? Like, what if we start out where the only thing we do is I bring a stethoscope to bed and we take each other's heartbeats, right?
Oh,
I
that's
mean, that's a little
cute.
innocuous.
I think
It
that's so
might seem
cute.
silly, but it's kind of
It is
cute,
kind of
right?
cute. Yeah.
It's kind of cute. So we'll take each other's heart rates,
And then I'm
or I
like, oh
can
my God,
pretend to
your blood
take your
pressure is so
pulse.
high. We need to go to the hospital.
Right. We need to go to the hospital. Like, oh, your heart rate's increasing. I wonder why that is. Maybe if I do more of
Oh,
this,
you're so
your
good at
heart
this,
rate will
Dr.
go up.
Nicole.
I know.
You're so good at this.
We talk about writing a book, and I'm like, and I'm assuming I'm going to write a nonfiction book. I'm like, I need to just write like a romance novel.
We should write one together. You know that you're in my book.
We should do it
Did you know that?
together.
Did you know that you're literally?
You told me that.
Did I ever send you my book?
I need your book
gosh.
because
You're
I have to read that.
I have a whole section
Oh my God.
on that I quoted you because
I'm
I
so
did
flattered.
Hurwitz's hot tips or whatever, and then I
love
took your stuff and I seriously.
Oh my God,
you're
thank you.
in my book. Everybody get my book. But
I love
I have to send it to you.
I need to read
did.
Yes, please send it to me.
Yes.
I pre-ordered it. Does that mean it's coming?
Did you ever get it?
I can't.
Oh my God.
I don't know that I think I got confused because I pre-ordered it and then I'm not sure if I...
Well, you probably didn't get it because you want to know why the pre-orders are still coming out. Because what happened was, and don't even ask, but they went on Amazon first and they fulfilled those orders first.
Okay,
Writing a book is very confusing. Your publisher will help you.
It's so confusing.
It's don't even ask. I have clients that still haven't gotten my book.
Oh my God.
It's been out for a month. Yeah, it's bad. We love my publisher.
I'm going to chase it to my agent.
Yes. We love her, but it's hard.
It's hard. Okay. So where were we? Taking each other's heartbeats during sex.
Yes.
So then you just build from there, right? And then maybe it's like, maybe it's, I have a sexual fantasy that, or maybe it's a kink, right? Maybe
what's the difference between a kink? I watched that one of yours. The difference between a kink and a
fetish.
A
fetish. Yes. Okay. So a kink is something that is kind of, first of all, we define it as existing outside of what society deems normal. Who the F knows what normal is, right?
Means.
What's normal? Normal is going to change. What I think is normal might be different than what you think is normal, which is different than what Gen Z thinks is normal. Like Gen Z, my students, and I know I'm zigzagging all over the place here,
okay.
but
That's how we do it here.
They all are into choking during sex. Choking
yes, they
is almost mainstream at this point.
But choking that came back in because it was hot when I was younger too.
And now it's back. And it's because they say it's because of porn. I'm fascinated by this topic, right? And I poll them every quarter. And if they say fewer of them are sexually active than that same cohort, that age group was 20 years ago, but the sex they're having is way kinkier and they're all choking each other. So if they say in my class, when I poll them, are you sexually active? They say yes. 90% of the ones that say yes are like, yeah, I'm totally into, I choke. I have definitely choked before. And when I said to them, and I just came out and I'm like, what is it about choking that's really, intense and sexy? And it really has to do kind of, I think, with the power dynamic, right? I mean, because power dynamics are always very sexy eroticism thrives on those very intense power dynamics. But they almost were like, why does choking seem so surprising to you? Like, we're surprised that you're surprised, which made me surprised.
That's interesting. You were surprised by them being surprised because you were surprised. Right, I get it.
Right, exactly. They're surprised that I'm surprised.
Well, I'm going to ask
and
my
I'm surprised
boys.
that they're surprised. So I know
I'm going to call them after this. I'm going to text them.
Your boys and get back to me. It's amazing.
But you know what else is really into what they do?
Yeah.
Is the hickeys.
Yeah. Oh,
hickeys are huge right now. Everywhere I go. And
I think, again, that's almost a power thing because it's like a possession thing, right? It's like that owning, possessing, again, very much thrives with that eroticism. But but I'm not quite done with the choking. So they're like, so I tell a funny story about choking, which is, because all my students do it, I did one time say to my husband, I was like, everyone's like, should we try this? Like, I feel like I can't really lecture about this. Like, does this work? And I was like, would you be up for trying it? And my husband was basically like, no fucking way. Right? Right? So I tell my friends that, right? People my age that, and they get it, right? But my students were all like, like they felt so sorry for me. They felt so sorry. And then I had to be like, you guys, I understand that you might feel really sorry for me, but maybe we should cut my husband some slack that he doesn't really want to like strangle the mother of his 3 children.
Because what if it goes just a little too far?
Right?
I mean, like, I don't understand.
Like, yeah, exactly. So I think they kind of wrap their brain around that. But anyway, the point of all this is that what's kinky to one person is not kinky to another. And back to your original question, what's the difference between a kink and a fetish is that kinky is typically something that like gets us off, that's exciting. Whereas a fetish is something that we like need, like that thing comes into the presence and we're just like, it's like an erotic supercharger. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's like you see a foot and it's like, you just cannot stop focusing on that foot and so, yeah. Okay. To also, fetishize, right, is a verb. So it's something that we can do. We can fetishize. And so you might, and that typically just happens from, it's like behavioral psych 101, where something with maybe it was a teacher who disciplined you when you were in school, and at that time when you were going through puberty, you remembered feeling a little bit of like a sexual thing. And then that just kind of grew over the years. And so now teachers, and acting out teachers, just like, you're just like fetishize them, right? But what's interesting with a fetish, and it's kind of a topic that there's not a lot written on, but I'm kind of interested in, is, you can fetishize a person. And it's not just like feathers and leather. A lot of people have like you see someone leather, you just become so turned on. But I think this happens, and I think we're more prone to this because really what's happening when you fetishize a person is you're objectifying them, right? Meaning that you aren't seeing them or appreciating them as a whole person, but instead you're treating them as like, oh, I have a fetish for blonde women, right? And it's like, that's different than saying like, oh, you find blonde women attractive. It's more saying that you don't see anything else about that person, just the color of their hair, right? Or somebody who fetishizes Asians or Black women. And again, it's not like, oh, they just have that like they just think that's attractive. It's the fetishizing is the removing of the person behind it. And even if it's not a physical attribute, people, because of porn, because of social media, because of the internet, I think it's really easy now for people to see these 2-dimensional images and just assign this fantasy of who they think they are that has nothing to do with the real person, right? So I've gotten into, and I don't know why I spend time doing this, like, you're going to laugh at me, but like, I'm sure you do the same, where you get like DMs basically from like horny and perverted men. And they're like, they're like, I can't stop thinking about you. I'm obsessed with you, right? I'm obsessed with you. I can't stop. I'm so sexually attracted to you. I just can't even deal with myself. Right. So like the normal thing to do would just to be to block them. But no, I take it on for me to explain
but do they offer
to
you
them
$5,000 a month? That's my question.
They're
I get
fetishizing
that.
me. Right. Well, then I'd be like, okay, I'll send you a picture of my foot for $5,000. Sure. I don't care.
I get that. They're like, I would, because it's the sugar daddies that want me. They're like, for $5,000 a month, I just want to give you money. I'm like, okay, you know what?
Money. I'm like, all right, that's fine. But I took it upon myself to explain to these guys, you don't know me, right? You're not obsessed with me. You're obsessed with this fantasy that's in your head. I don't control or police what your fantasy is, but don't DM me thinking that I'm going to respond like your fantasy because you've just objectified me, right? Like, if you want to create and masturbate to whatever that fantasy is you have, go do you. But what you're fantasizing about isn't really me. It's this like, I might as well be anime, right? Like I might as well be like the cartoon, The Little Mermaid. Like it's not real. So I think I explained this to a couple
some
of them.
people like that too.
Yeah.
Some people like that.
Anime porn is huge.
What's it called? Hentai.
Well, and hentai. Is it hentai or hentai?
I'm not sure. I just know that it's.
Yeah.
Isn't it anime?
Well, you know how that.
What's the difference?
Hentai is anime, and I think hentai is just Japanese anime. I'm sure there's somebody listening to this like, ugh. But I think it's like
get it right, you guys. Get it right.
Get it right, you guys. Get it right. But you know what's really interesting is the way that was developed had to do with just getting around laws about pornography. And so it became that if it was animated, then it didn't it didn't count as pornography. And so people could make it and produce it. So I know, but that's why when people are like, isn't that weird about anime or hentai or however you pronounce it? It's not weird because it's really no different than somebody who has who is sexually attracted to Brad Pitt or to Angelina Jolie or to Harry Styles or, Justin Bieber. It's a two-dimensional image, and everything that you're assigning to that is just your fantasy.
Okay, I have a question. What if someone says they can't orgasm without X, Y, or Z? Like, I dated a guy who said he couldn't orgasm unless I wore red heels.
Yes. Okay. So that is a fetish. So that is the other part of this definition, is that it is an erotic supercharger and you literally can't get off without it. So exactly. So that's a perfect example. Yes, because for example, if he was like one night, like, ooh, do you want to wear sexy high red heels to bed? Right. You might be like, that's kind of kinky, right? You might think of that. I think of that as being a little kinky. Somebody else might think of that as nothing, but like, it's a little kinky. Or do you want to rub ice cubes, right? Or temperature play. But if they literally can't have an orgasm without that, that is a fetish.
Okay, and so is that something that like you could? Is that a negative thing? Is that is that turning into something? I mean, because I was like,
it begins to. I really think and I don't have a clear answer for that, right? But I do think that psychologically, there's something that makes it. Sorry about that. Psychologically, there's something that makes it different when it's something the person really can't have an orgasm without versus something fun that you're introducing into the mix. Because then it's like, well, wait a minute, are you having sex with me or the red high heels?
That's
right?
Exactly.
It just starts to feel
exactly. That's exactly where I was. My head was like, I cannot.
It's like, do I even need to be here?
And I'm going to go.
Or are you just masturbating to my high heels?
That's what I thought was going on. That's what I really felt.
Yeah.
It didn't last very long.
I think that's a fair thing to feel. I mean, I understand that. But it just kind of depends on, who's having sex and how those two people are kind of processing it. I mean, if my husband told me that he couldn't have sex unless a certain object was present, or if I was like, if he couldn't have or if I were to tell him that I couldn't have an orgasm unless he was choking me, right? There's something different about that than saying like, do you want to sort of try this and see what happens?
I totally agree.
Yeah. It's almost like it stops being something that you're participating in and it becomes something that's like an object that is really sort of the total direction of
like
your.
It's like necessary.
Exactly. Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah.
I just love you, Dr. Nicole. I love you.
I love you too.
Can you come back next year and open my show with me?
I would love to.
I
this
just think you're
so
amazing.
Much fun.
Can everybody,
I think you're amazing too.
Can everybody find you? Like, you're everywhere.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I'm probably the easiest to find on social media. So my Instagram and my TikTok handle are both Nicole_the Sex Professor. So Nicole the Sex Professor. And then I have a website, which is also, thank you, NicoleTheSexProfessor.com. And you can find links to all my articles and podcast interviews and
You're
stuff
so
there.
smart, Dr. I just have one more question. Do your kids, not your kids, not your real kids, but your kids at school, do they like love you? Do they worship you? Do they
not
what if they
not
can't get into your class? What if they can't? Like, do
not
they
to
wait
sound
list?
like a jerk, but they do. They're really sweet. Like when I walk across campus and they all come up and they're like, "Can we take a picture with you?"
No, you're
And
lying.
yeah,
Oh my God,
no,
you're a
I know.
star.
They treat me like a little mini celebrity. It's really cute. And I'm kind of famous just in that little tiny little microcosm. And then the other place I'm famous is there's this place called University Village that's close to the campus. And it's like this huge outdoor mall. And so a lot of kids have work there. And so if I go there literally I'm famous there too, because those kids all have jobs there. And so sometimes I'll go to the Starbucks and I'll pick up my drink and it'll say Professor McNichols. I know. So it's cute. It's really cute. It's perfect because I'm not well known enough to like actually have to be famous, which I think would be, well, I think you are too, but it's fun. There's a lot of love and it's mutual. It's reciprocal. It's, I love them and they inspire me daily. And I'm just so grateful that I get to do what I do.
Well, if you're ever on the East Coast, we'll have to meet and talk about sex and vice versa.
I would love
and
that.
other fun stuff.
I know that would be so much fun.
We'd be like best friends.
We would be best friends. We really would be.
Yay.
I love it.
I'm so glad you're here. So anyway, so everybody go check out Dr. Nicole McNichols. And oh my God, I just love this episode. I don't even want to go.
It's amazing. I'm so excited. I know.
Thank you so much for being here.
We'll have to do it again.
We will do it again. Absolutely. And so everybody follow Dr. Nicole McNichols all over the place. TikTok's amazing. Instagram's amazing. I stalk her. You should stalk her as well. And in a nice way. And if you have any questions, I wanted to tell you one more thing. I just actually sent, before we got on to record, I sent Zach one of your videos of TikTok. They both go to Syracuse because it was something, I don't know, I'll share it with you afterwards because I don't want to embarrass him, but it was something that he was really good at. Yeah, it was perfect. You're just so smart.
Oh my gosh. I would love to hear that. I will tell him if he ever has questions, he can reach out to me. Yeah, please do. Okay. And also, as I go to research my book, I might, love to talk to him just because I'm trying to get students at all these different universities.
I got two boys there at Syracuse. Yeah. I got lots of kids over there. Lots of kids on the East Coast. So
oh my God,
not my kids, but other kids that talk to me. Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody do me a favor, go and follow Dr. Nicole and follow me. Where am I? JenniferHurwitz.com or Doing Relationships Right or whatever. Buy my new book and do something fabulous for yourself today. And be sex positive and don't judge people. And what else? Just don't be judgy. I don't like people judging other people.
Don't be judgy.
And be kind to each other.
Be real. Feel kind. Be authentic.
Be authentic. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. And be connected.
Be connected and be intimate and kiss each other. Everybody kiss.
Exactly.
Everybody kiss. Bye, Dr. Nicole. I love you, girl. And that's it. I will talk to everybody later. Peace, love, and so much truth. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Doing Relationships Right. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the show, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast episodes. And please grab my books, One Happy Divorce and Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda on my website, JenniferHurwitz.com. And look out for my new book, all about doing dating right, coming soon. As usual, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace, love, and truth.